Think of someone you know who decided to change their life. They started training. They started studying. They stopped drinking on weekends. They started making money. And then something happened that nobody warns you about. The people closest to them got weird. They didn't come at them directly. It was dirtier than that. First came the jokes. Then the, "You've changed." Then the, "Don't forget about us now." Then the heavy silences. And then the line that says it all, "Look who thinks he's better than us." You've watched this happen, and if you've ever really tried to climb, you've lived it. Now I want you to understand something. That wasn't malice. That wasn't simple envy. That thing has a name. It has a mechanism, and it has almost 3,000 years of history. A sick, nearly blind man, abandoned by almost all of his friends, riding in cheap boarding houses in the Alps, looked at that mechanism and described it with a precision nobody has beaten since. He called it ressentiment. And what he found is worse than you think. He found that this mechanism isn't only the reason people hate you when you grow, it's the reason almost everything you were taught to call goodness is, in fact, weakness wearing a beautiful name. Tonight, 7 brutal truths, 7 hammer blows, and I'll warn you now, the 6th one is about you, not about them. You'll want to close this video before you get there. Don't. There's no comfort here. There's a forge. But first, you need to know who's speaking, because it changes the weight of every word. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote the most violent hymns to human strength while being the frailest man you can imagine. He had migraines that left him vomiting for 3 days straight, in the dark, unable to lift his head from the pillow. His eyesight was so bad he could barely read. He wrote with his face nearly touching the paper, and after half an hour, the letters danced. He spent years drifting between cheap rooms in Italy and Switzerland, hunting for a climate that hurt less, eating badly, alone. He lost his father at 4. He lost the woman he loved to his closest friend. He then lost that friend, Wagner, in a rupture that gutted him. He published books almost nobody bought. One of his works sold a few dozen copies. He wrote most of what the entire world reads today, while having in his lifetime no more than a handful of readers. That man had every reason on earth to become resentful. He had the full script in his hands: sick, poor, abandoned, ignored, humiliated. All he had to do was point at the world and say it was the world's fault. Anyone would have. And that is exactly why he's the only person with the authority to talk about this, because he knew that poison from the inside. He felt it rise, and he refused to drink it. When Nietzsche talks about ressentiment, it isn't theory from a comfortable study. It's a field report, written by a man who fought that war inside his own ruined body, every single day until the end. First truth. Their hatred isn't about what you did. It's about what you became. Notice something. While you were doing badly, everyone loved you. When you were broke, in debt, out of shape, drifting, crying the same tears for 3 years running, you were beloved. People gave you advice. They invited you out. They told you life is hard. That's just how it is. And you thought that was friendship. It wasn't. Or it wasn't only that. Part of it was comfort. Because while you were down there, you were living proof that staying down there is normal. You were the permission they granted themselves. And the day you started climbing, you stopped being the permission and became the accusation. It isn't that you said anything. You don't have to say anything. Your existence is the message. Every day you get up early and train, you're saying, without opening your mouth, that it was possible. And if it was possible for you, same background, same excuses, then their excuses collapse. Nobody forgives the person who knocks down their excuses. And notice that they almost never say it to your face. They say it among themselves, quietly, when you're not there. Because saying it out loud would force them to name the reason, and the reason is unspeakable. That's why the hatred doesn't arrive when you fail. It arrives exactly when you start succeeding. Watch the timing. It's always the same. The hostility isn't a response to your arrogance. It's a response to your distance. Second truth. There are two moralities in the world, and you were raised inside the wrong one. This is the heart of what Nietzsche discovered, and it's the most dangerous thing he ever wrote. He said there have historically been two completely opposite ways of deciding what is good. The first he called master morality. It works like this. The strong man looks at himself, at his own life, at his own strength, and says, "This is good." And then he looks at the opposite of that, weakness, cowardice, pettiness, and says, "That is bad." Notice the order. First, he affirms himself. The bad is only a leftover, a contrast, a footnote. He barely thinks about it. The second he called slave morality. And here the order flips completely. The weak man doesn't start with himself. He starts with the other. He looks at the strong man, at the one who has what he doesn't, and says, "That man is evil." And only then, as a leftover, does he conclude, "Therefore I, who am his opposite, am the good one." Do you see what happened there? An entire identity born out of a negation. He doesn't know who he is, he only knows who he isn't. And that's why Nietzsche said, slave morality needs an enemy in order to exist. The master doesn't need you to affirm himself. The slave does. Without someone to condemn, he has no way of knowing he's good. Look around with these glasses on, and you won't be able to take them off. The people who define themselves entirely by what they hate. The ones who can only say who they are by talking about who they aren't. The ones who need a fresh villain every week in order to keep feeling virtuous. That isn't morality. That's rancor accounting. And notice the tell. Slave morality is always loudest about the sin it is least capable of committing. The man who condemns greed most fiercely is rarely the man who turned down money. He's the man nobody ever offered any to. Third truth. Ressentiment is a revenge that never happens. Now the mechanism, and this is where it gets genuinely dark. The strong man, when offended, reacts. He explodes, fights, hits back, and it's done. His rage is a storm, violent, short, and then the sky clears. He doesn't hold on to it, not because he's a saint, but because the charge has been discharged. The powerless man can't do that. He can't hit back. He's weaker, or afraid, or dependent on the other man, or simply lacks the nerve. So the reaction stays trapped inside him. And a trapped reaction doesn't disappear. It ferments. Nietzsche described it as a poison a man can't spit out and swallows every day instead. The offense is relived 1,000 times in his head. The conversation is restaged with better answers that were never said. The other man is tried, convicted, and executed in an imaginary court that convenes at 3 in the morning. And since the actual revenge is never going to happen, it has to happen some other way. It happens on the table of values. He can't bring the strong man down, so he rewrites the meaning of strength. He decides that being strong is bad, that wanting to win is ugly, that ambition is a sickness, that whoever has stole, that whoever stands out is arrogant. That is the only revenge available to a man who can't hit back, turning the other man's virtue into a sin. And it works. It worked so well that today, if you say out loud that you want to be strong, rich, superior to who you were, someone will call you problematic. Not because you harmed anyone, just for having said it. Fourth truth. They renamed weakness and called it virtue. Here is the most brutal image Nietzsche ever wrote, and it's going to stay with you. He told us to picture lambs and birds of prey. The birds of prey carry off the lambs. The lambs naturally don't like it, and the lambs say to one another, "These birds are evil." And therefore, whoever is as far as possible from a bird of prey, whoever is its opposite, a lamb, that one is good. It sounds reasonable, and that's exactly where the trap is. Because Nietzsche asks, and what should the bird do? It isn't evil, it's a bird. To demand that it not be what it is would be like demanding that strength not express itself as strength. But look at what the lamb did with that. He took his own condition, being unable to hunt, and converted it into a moral choice. He doesn't say, "I don't hunt because I can't." He says, "I don't hunt because I am good." And that move, that single move, is the most common thing in the world. Look at the names we use. The person who can't fight back calls it patience. The person who can't confront calls it avoiding drama. The person who's afraid to try calls it not caring about that stuff. The person who can't change calls it acceptance. The person who can't win calls it detachment. The person who can neither truly forgive nor confront calls it forgiveness. None of them is consciously lying. And that's what makes the mechanism brilliant and terrifying. The person believes it. They genuinely feel good. Nietzsche wasn't saying that patience, forgiveness, and acceptance are bad things. He was saying something far sharper. They're only worth anything if you have the option of the opposite. Forgiveness from a man who could retaliate is greatness. Forgiveness from a man who couldn't is just the pretty name for helplessness. And here's the question that separates one from the other, and you can ask it about your own life right now. Is the thing you call your virtue a choice, or is it the only thing you had left? Fifth truth. You don't need small enemies. You need enemies your own size. Before I turn this on you, and I will in the next one, something has to be said, because this is where most videos on this subject ruin everything. The opposite of ressentiment is not contempt. If you leave this video thinking you should now look down on small people and despise them, you understood nothing. You only switched poisons. Contempt is just as reactive as hatred. Both keep you busy with them. Nietzsche wrote something that sounds contradictory and isn't. He said you should honor your enemy, that a good enemy is a gift, that the greatness of a man is measured by the size of the adversaries he chooses. Why? Because the enemy your own size forces you to grow. He pulls you out of comfort, makes you sharpen everything you have, and the fight with him builds you. The small enemy does the opposite. He consumes you. You spend your week thinking about your brother-in-law's comment. You rewrite the family group chat argument in your head. You plan the day you'll prove that old colleague wrong. And while you do that, the one running your life is her. That's ressentiment's final trap, and it's why it's so efficient at destroying people with potential. It doesn't leave you idle. It leaves you extremely busy. Busy with the wrong enemy, spending on a small target the energy that would have built a life. A great man chooses great adversaries. A small man is chosen by small ones. And here's the cost in plain numbers. Every hour spent on a small enemy is an hour not spent building. 10 years of that is a life. Sixth truth. And here I need your honesty. You clicked on this video thinking you're the bird of prey. You clicked because part of you recognized the story at the start. The person who rises and is punished for it, and felt that it was you. That you're the one who grows, and the others are the lambs sabotaging you. Statistically, that's unlikely. Because the bird of prey doesn't watch videos about why the lambs hate it. It's hunting. It doesn't even notice them. Its indifference is total. And that indifference is exactly what drives them insane. Whoever watches a video about ressentiment almost always has ressentiment. Myself included when I wrote this script. So let's do the hard thing. Here are the signs, and I want you to count how many are yours. 1. You call other people's ambition arrogance. 2. When someone you know wins, your first thought, the first one, not the second, which is already edited, is to hunt for the shortcut, the luck, the connection, the privilege. You look for the explanation that excuses you from having tried. 3. You're proud of qualities that have never been tested. You think you're humble, but you've never had anything that could have gone to your head. You think you're loyal, but you've never received an offer big enough to tempt you. 4. You have a favorite argument from years ago that you're still winning, with new lines in the shower. 5. You feel relief when someone successful falls. Not loud joy, relief. The quiet, lukewarm kind you've never told anyone about. 6. You postpone something you badly wanted and manage to convince yourself you don't want it anymore. And here is the detail that makes this mechanism almost undetectable from the inside. Ressentiment doesn't feel like hatred. It feels like justice. Nobody wakes up thinking, "Today I'll be petty." A person wakes up with the crisp sensation that the world is unfair, that they deserve more, that others have what they shouldn't have. They feel lucid. They even feel noble. And that's why almost nobody leaves that place. Because to leave it, you first have to admit that all that lucidity was anesthesia. Seventh truth. The cure isn't hitting back. The cure is creating. Now I owe you a way out, and it exists. Nietzsche didn't write all this to leave you on the floor. He wrote it so you'd get up differently. And the way out is a single line. The slave reacts. The master creates. Notice that everything ressentiment does is reaction. It answers. It compares. It judges. It waits for the other person to move so it can position itself against them. It's an entire life built on top of somebody else. And that's why hitting back doesn't work. You can spend 10 years building a whole life just to prove something to someone, and the day you finally do it, you'll discover that person doesn't even remember you. You worked for them for a decade, unpaid. Proving something to someone is ressentiment in good clothes. The opposite of that is affirming. It's starting with yourself, like Nietzsche's master. Looking at your own life, at what you want to build, and saying, "This is good," before looking at anyone else. Not against them, independent of them. And here's the practical test, and it never fails. If your goal disappears the moment the person you want to impress stops existing, then that goal was never yours. You weren't building. You were answering. Nietzsche called it amor fati, to love your own fate. Not to like everything that happened to you, that's silly optimism, and he despised it. But to take your entire history, with the mistakes, the humiliations, the wasted years, and say, "This is mine. This made me, and I want it again." Because the day you stop needing them to be wrong, they lose the power to make you exist. And then the strangest thing happens, and you'll notice it within weeks. When you stop answering, they vanish. Not because they left, because they were never there. They were living inside your head, and you were the one paying rent. Now, this week's task. One task. And it's the most uncomfortable one I've ever asked for on this channel. Pick a person you can't stand. Not a great enemy, someone from your real life, someone who's been irritating you for a long time. And answer one question with brutal honesty. What does that person have that I wish I had? It could be money, it could be nerve, it could be freedom, it could be their indifference to what other people think. It could be something small and ridiculous. If the answer comes instantly, you already know what was going on. That was never a moral judgment. It was an unpaid bill. Then do the second part, which is the part that transforms. Take that thing you want and make the smallest possible move toward it this week. Not a plan, a move. A message sent, a workout done, a rate charged, a truth said. Because ressentiment dies of one thing only: action in the direction of what it was condemning. And if you did it, if you looked inward and found the poison, write 4 words in the comments. I saw the poison. That isn't a confession of weakness, it's the opposite. Only someone with strength can admit it, and the ones without it will be down in the comments explaining why this video is about other people. And answer the other one too. Which of the 7 burned deepest? Not the prettiest. The one that made you uncomfortable. The one you already started arguing with in your head while I was talking. Write its number. Because the one that stings is the door you have to walk through. One last thing, and it's serious. This video is about power and will, not about swallowing real pain. There's a difference between the ressentiment Nietzsche described and genuine injury. Abuse that actually happened, real injustice, grief that doesn't lift. That isn't weakness dressed as virtue, and willpower doesn't fix it. If that's you, get real help, a professional, someone you trust. Nietzsche wrote about becoming steel. He never wrote that you should pretend the wound isn't there. If this video lit something in you, leave a like. That's how it finds another person who tonight will lie awake, winning an old argument in their head. And subscribe, because we don't look for comfort here. We look for fire. And every week I come back with more. Become who you are, before the demon asks.